The sand was thick with blood that didn't belong to Marcus Webb. He knelt in the center of the krill amphitheater, wrists bound behind his back, the weight of 100,000 alien eyes pressing down on him like gravitational collapse. The air smelled of ozone, copper, and something sweet, krill pheromones released when they smelled fear. They were drenched in it, but not from him. From themselves. They didn't know that yet. Deathbringer Kale emerged from the shadow arch. 7 feet of chitin and muscle, 4 arms each ending in razored talons, a jaw that unhinged to reveal 3 rows of teeth designed to crush bone. His exoskeleton was polished obsidian, scarred with the kill marks of 12 conquered species. Behind him, a holographic counter ticked upward, 847 confirmed kills in the arena, 0 losses. The crowd's roar became a physical force. It thrummed through Marcus's chest, rattled his teeth, vibrated the sand beneath his knees. The krill loved spectacle. They loved the moment before the kill most of all, that exquisite pause when the prey understood there was no escape. Marcus understood something else entirely. The krill overlord rose from his throne, a bloated monstrosity draped in the skins of defeated galactic leaders. His voice was amplified across 1 billion speakers, relayed to every krill-controlled world in the sector. Propaganda, a lesson in terror. Behold, the overlord hissed, each word dripping with centuries of conquest. A human from a world called Earth, a death world, they say. They say humans are resilient. They say humans are dangerous. The crowd laughed. It was a wet, clicking sound, like 1,000 mandibles snapping. The overlord leaned forward, his eyes, 6 of them, arranged in a crescent, focused on Marcus with predatory delight. The human will have 1 minute, 1 minute of life. Run, little mammal, run, and we will count each heartbeat. The holographic counter above the arena shifted, 60 seconds. A countdown appeared in blazing red. Kale cracked his neck, a gesture he'd learned from watching conquered species grovel. He was playing with his food, showing off. Marcus didn't move. Run, Kale said, his voice was gravel and poison. I enjoy the chase. The counter, 58 seconds, 57, 56. Marcus lifted his head, his eyes found the overlord, then Kale, then the crowd. He wasn't looking at them like a man looking at executioners. He was looking at them like a man who'd already seen the future. He opened his mouth, spoke for the first time. You made a mistake, Marcus said. His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes before hurricanes. You gave me a minute, but you don't know what we are. You've never fought us. You've never studied us. Kale tilted his head, confused. The crowd's roar softened, replaced by a curious chittering. The overlord's 6 eyes narrowed. Enlighten us, the overlord said. What are you? Marcus smiled. It was not a reassuring smile. It was the smile of something that had stopped being prey millions of years ago. We're the reason predators have nightmares. The counter hit 50 seconds. Marcus moved. The chains didn't break. Marcus's wrists shattered them. Later, the krill would analyze the footage 1,000 times and still not believe what they saw. Human bone density, human muscle compression, human adrenaline response, none of it should have been possible. But Marcus Webb wasn't running on biology. He was running on 3 billion years of evolutionary fury. The sand exploded beneath his feet. Kale had time to blink, that was it, 1 blink. When his eyelids reopened, Marcus had crossed 30 feet of arena floor and was already inside the predator's guard, inside the reach of those 4 razored arms, inside the space where Kale's talons couldn't generate killing momentum. Marcus's right fist drove upward into the soft tissue beneath Kale's jaw. Not a punch, a precision strike. The krill didn't know this, but humans had been observing them for 6 years. Every fight, every kill, every weakness catalogued. The submental triangle, the one place on a krill's body where the chitin didn't grow, where nerve clusters converged, where a single blow could paralyze. Kale's forearms spasmed, his jaw unhinged involuntarily. 3 rows of teeth snapped at empty air. The counter read 48 seconds. Marcus grabbed the predator's 2 lower arms by the wrists. He twisted, not with anger, with geometry. The human body understood leverage in ways the krill never evolved to comprehend. Kale's elbow joints inverted, chitin cracked. A sound like splintering ice echoed through the silent arena. 47 seconds. The crowd had stopped breathing. 100,000 creatures, all of them predators, all of them born to kill, watching in stunned horror as a prey species dismantled their champion. Marcus released the shattered arms. Kale stumbled backward, his mandibles clattering in confusion and pain. He tried to raise his remaining arms, too slow. Humans didn't just fight fast, they thought fast. Every micro-movement of Kale's muscles was a sentence Marcus read before the predator finished writing it. The human stepped inside Kale's reach again. His left hand grabbed the base of the predator's skull. His right hand found the mandible hinge. 47 seconds left, Marcus whispered. I only need 10. He pulled. The sound of a krill mandible being torn from its socket is not a sound the galaxy had ever heard. There was a reason for that. No prey species had ever been strong enough. No prey species had ever been fast enough. No prey species had ever looked at a krill and seen not a monster, but a checklist of vulnerabilities. Marcus saw all of them. Kale screamed. It was a wet, gurgling sound, the scream of an apex predator learning it was never the apex. Marcus drove his knee into the predator's sternum. 3 ribs cracked. The crowd heard it. The Overlord heard it. Every krill in the galaxy, watching through relayed broadcasts, heard it. 45 seconds. Marcus stepped back. He let Kale fall to his knees. The predator, the Deathbringer, the undefeated champion of 12 species, clawed at the sand with his remaining arms, trying to crawl away. Trying to run. The arena was dead silent. No chittering, no roaring. Just the wet, ragged breathing of a dying predator and the steady, unbothered breath of the human who'd killed him. Marcus looked up at the Overlord. Blood dripped from his knuckles, not his blood. You gave me 1 minute, he said. I've got 45 seconds left. Want to see what else I can do in 45 seconds. The Overlord's 6 eyes dilated. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, a krill overlord felt something he couldn't remember ever feeling. Fear. Marcus turned back to Kale. The predator was trying to speak, but his mandible hung loose, useless. His 4 arms twitched in the sand. Don't worry, Marcus said. I'm not going to kill you. Kale's eyes showed confusion, relief. Then Marcus smiled again, that same terrible ancient smile. I'm going to let you live, so you can tell your people what happened here, so you can explain to every krill in the galaxy what it feels like to be prey. He leaned down, pressed his forehead against Kale's. His voice dropped to a whisper that only the dying predator could hear. We're not a death world species because we survive monsters, Marcus said. We're a death world species because we kill them, and we've been doing it for 3 million years. He stood, walked to the center of the arena, raised his bloodied hands to the silent crowd. 30 seconds left, he called out. Does anyone else want to try? Marcus Webb didn't run. He walked calmly, deliberately toward the arena's holding cells, scattering krill guards who suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. The countdown had reached 22 seconds when he passed through the archway. The crowd remained frozen, unable to process what their senses had reported. The Overlord's voice shattered the silence. Kill HIM, orbital strike, now. Above the arena, 3 krill dreadnoughts adjusted their firing solutions. Plasma cannons charged. A kill zone was calculated, a 5-meter radius that would vaporize everything, turning the arena into a crater. No human could survive. No thing could survive. The cannons fired. A beam of superheated plasma, hot enough to crack continents, screamed toward the arena. Then stopped. 50 meters above Marcus's head, a shimmering energy field blossomed, blue-white and impossible. The plasma splashed against it like water against glass. The krill tactical officers stared at their screens in disbelief. The shield's signature didn't match any known technology. The hologram appeared in the center of the arena. A woman, human, dark skin, gray-streaked hair, a face that had seen decades of war and decades of peace. She wore civilian clothes, no armor, no weapons, but her eyes held the same terrible calm as Marcus's. Krill Overlord, she said. Her voice was amplified across every krill frequency. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I am the director of Earth's Extrasolar Observation Division. You've been watching us for 40 years. We've been watching you for 60. The Overlord rose from his throne. His chitinous body trembled, not with fear, he told himself, but with rage. You dare. We dared 60 years ago, Vasquez interrupted. We found your first scout ship drifting past Pluto. We watched you observe us. We watched you catalog our wars, our famines, our worst moments. You thought we were primitive, violent, easy prey. She smiled. It was the same smile Marcus had worn, the smile of someone who knew something you didn't. You were right about one thing, she continued. Humans are violent. We've killed each other for millennia over land, resources, religion, sports, but you made an error in your analysis. You assumed our violence was a weakness. You assumed it meant we couldn't unite. She gestured and the hologram expanded, showing Earth blue and green and impossibly beautiful. What you didn't understand is that human violence is not chaos. It was never chaos. It was training. Every war, every conflict, every time we hurt each other, we were learning, we were refining, we were becoming the most efficient killing machines in the galaxy. The Overlord's claws dug into his throne's armrests. You are one world. We are an empire of 47 worlds, Vasquez said. 73 billion subjects, 12,000 warships. We know. We've mapped every single one. How? Pattern recognition, she said it like it was obvious. Humans evolved to recognize patterns in chaos, in tall grass, in moving shadows, in the behavior of prey and predator. Your empire is not chaos. Your empire is a pattern, and we've spent 6 decades learning to read it. Marcus reached the edge of the arena. He turned back to face the Overlord one last time. You gave me 1 minute to live, he said. You should have given yourself an hour. The shield above him flickered and died. The transport beam caught him, human technology, not Krill, and lifted him into the sky. 3 Krill dreadnoughts watched him go. None fired. They were too busy receiving new sensor readings. Across the Krill Empire, on all 47 worlds, something was waking up. Transport ships appearing from nowhere. Communications arrays broadcasting on Krill frequencies. And everywhere, every single world, the same message playing on a loop. The Predators gave humanity 1 minute. They didn't survive the first 10 seconds. This is not a threat. This is a prediction. The Overlord's throne cracked beneath his claws. He finally understood. They hadn't captured a human. A human had allowed himself to be captured. And now the hunter was home. The holding pens of the Krill Empire were not designed for hope. They were designed for despair, low ceilings to induce claustrophobia, constant illumination to prevent sleep, periodic sonic pulses to disorient inner ears. The 87 species imprisoned across Krill space had learned to live without hope generations ago. Parents taught children that hope was the first death. Hope was what made the Krill's final victory hurt so much. But hope doesn't listen to parents. It started on Krill Prime in the deepest pit of the arena complex. A Vrixian named Serac, 6 limbs, 3 eyes, a species bred for labor, watched Marcus Webb dismantle the Deathbringer. He watched with the same disbelief as every other slave in the galaxy. And when Marcus walked free, something sparked in Serac's chest that he'd been told was extinct. Hope. The broadcast didn't take long to spread. Slave communications, low-frequency bursts that Krill security dismissed as cargo manifest errors, carried the human's message to every holding cell in the Empire. Not words, just the image, just the 10 seconds. The first riot began on Krill Secundus, a mining world. 20,000 EX slaves, beetle-like creatures with crushing strength, simply stopped working. When the Krill guards came with shock sticks and gas, the EX didn't run. They turned, they fought. They won. Serac watched the reports come in on a cracked data slate he'd stolen from a guard's corpse. His 3 hands shook as he read the numbers. 12 slave uprisings in 4 hours. 7 Krill armories captured, 3 orbital platforms broadcasting human propaganda instead of Krill decrees. Impossible, Serac whispered. It's not impossible, said a voice behind him. Serac spun. A human stood in the doorway of his cell, a woman small by Krill standards with close-cropped hair and eyes that seemed to absorb light. She wore no uniform. She carried no visible weapon, but Krill blood stained her hands up to the elbows. Name's Chen, she said. We're here to open the doors. You're real, Serac breathed. The human in the arena, he was real. He's very real, Chen stepped aside, revealing a corridor filled with fallen Krill guards. And he's very busy, but he sent me to tell you something. Serac straightened his 6 limbs, forcing himself to stand tall. Tell me. Chen's eyes hardened. The Krill have ruled through fear for 3 centuries, but fear is a currency, and like all currencies, it loses value when people stop believing in it. She extended a hand, calloused, scarred, human. My people have been afraid for 3 million years, Sarak, afraid of predators, afraid of the dark, afraid of each other. But we learned something important about fear a long time ago. What did you learn? Chen smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a species that had looked into the abyss and recognized itself. We learned that fear is a gift. It tells you exactly what you need to survive. The Krill think fear makes you weak. They're wrong. Fear makes you fast. Fear makes you smart. Fear makes you capable of anything. Sarak took her hand. Her grip was iron. Today, Chen said, we're going to teach the Krill what fear really means. Behind them, the holding cells of Krill Primus exploded open. 87 species poured into the corridors, not as slaves, not as prey. As an army. And somewhere in the heart of the Krill capital, Marcus Webb stood before the Overlord's throne room, grinning at the dozen guards who blocked his path. 1 minute, he said, that's what your master gave me. I've still got 17 seconds left on the clock. He cracked his knuckles. Want to see what I can do with 17? The Overlord's throne room was vast, a cathedral to conquest, with vaulted ceilings carved from the skulls of extinct species and floors polished with the petrified blood of 1 billion sacrifices. The air was thick with incense designed to mask the smell of fear, but the Overlord could still smell it. His own. The doors opened. Marcus Webb walked through them alone. Behind him, 12 elite Krill guards lay unconscious, not dead, the Overlord noticed with a fresh wave of terror. Unconscious. The human had chosen not to kill them, which meant he had something worse in mind. You've made a tactical error, the Overlord said, his voice steadier than he felt. My fleet will. Your fleet is gone, Marcus interrupted. The Overlord's 6 eyes blinked in confusion. What? Marcus walked toward the throne, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. He pulled a small holographic projector from his pocket and tossed it onto the floor. The image that bloomed above it was impossible. Krill Prime's orbital defense grid, 1,200 battle stations, 3 dreadnoughts, 2 carrier groups was gone. In its place, a human fleet, not warships. The Overlord stared at the configuration, trying to understand. They were mining vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, ships that had no business being in a military engagement. And yet the Krill fleet was debris. How, the Overlord breathed. Marcus stopped 10 feet from the throne. We told you, 60 years of observation. We knew every weakness in your defense grid, every blind spot in your sensors, every single point where a ship could slip through and deliver a payload. What payload? Your ships are civilian. Marcus's smile was thin and sharp. Our ships are containers, the payload is us. The Overlord's cranial crest flattened, a sign of extreme distress. You're lying, 20,000 human sleeper cells, impossible. We scanned every ship that entered Krill space for decades. You scanned for weapons, Marcus said. You didn't scan for people. You assumed no species would be stupid enough to send unarmed civilians into enemy territory. We assumed correctly. No, Marcus stepped onto the throne's dais. The Overlord tried to retreat, but his massive body was fused to the throne's control systems. He couldn't move. You assumed we were rational. You assumed we valued survival over victory. You assumed that because we're a death world species, we cling to life at all costs. He leaned close. The Overlord could smell human breath, warm, slightly metallic, absolutely terrifying. You were wrong, Marcus whispered. Death world species don't fear death. We grew up with death. Death is our neighbor, our roommate, our childhood pet. We stopped being afraid of death the moment we invented fire and realized we could burn the monsters back. The Overlord's 6 eyes searched Marcus's face for mercy, found none. So what now? The Overlord asked. You kill me. Another Krill takes my place. The Empire continues. No, Marcus straightened. The Empire ends, not because you're dead, because your slaves are free. He gestured at the hologram. The image shifted, showing 47 worlds in real time. On every single one, the same scene played out. Slaves rising, Krill guards falling, holding cells emptying. The uprising wasn't chaos, it was coordinated, precise. Human advisors on every world leading the charge. You think this was about revenge? Marcus asked. You think we came here to punish you for enslaving lesser species? The Overlord's mandibles clicked nervously. Why else? Marcus laughed, a genuine, warm laugh that somehow made everything worse. We came here to teach an entire galaxy how to fight, how to win, how to be what kills, what hunts them. He turned his back on the Overlord, walked toward the throne room doors. Where are you going? The Overlord demanded. Marcus paused at the threshold, looked back over his shoulder. I've got 17 seconds left on my minute. I'm going to use them to watch your empire burn. The doors closed behind him. The Overlord sat alone in his throne, surrounded by the skulls of the dead, listening to the sound of his empire crumbling. On the hologram, the countdown froze. 000001. 1 second left. The clock never moved again. The broadcast began without warning. Every screen in every Krill-controlled system flickered. The Overlord's face appeared, but not the triumphant conqueror of 3 centuries. This was a broken creature, his chitin cracked, his 6 eyes dull with exhaustion and something far worse, desperation. I am Overlord Varn of the Krill Empire, he said, his voice trembled. I am requesting parley. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. A Krill Overlord had never requested anything. Krill demanded, Krill conquered, Krill took. But Varn was doing something new. He was begging. You have defeated our fleets, you have freed our slaves, you have reduced our empire to this. He gestured at something off-screen, rubble, smoke, the collapsed ceiling of his throne room. I do not understand what you are. I do not understand how you won. His 6 eyes filled with fluid, the Krill equivalent of tears. So I am asking, please tell me what you are. The reply came from Dr. Elena Vasquez. She stood on the bridge of a human vessel, not a warship, still a cargo hauler because that was the joke of it all. Humans didn't need warships. Humans needed containers. You want to know what we are, Overlord, Vasquez said. I'll tell you. The holographic display behind her lit up with images. Earth, savannas, forests, oceans, and running through all of them humans hunting, tracking, persisting. We are persistence predators, Vasquez said. That means we don't need to be faster than our prey. We just need to be able to follow them until they collapse from exhaustion. We evolved to chase antelope across savannas for 2 days straight, literally. We would run and run and run, and the antelope would stop running because they couldn't breathe. We could. We have the most efficient cooling system in the animal kingdom. The image shifted, a human male running beneath a blazing sun, sweat dripping from his skin. We don't have claws, we don't have fangs, we don't have venom or flight or camouflage. What we have is endurance. What we have is the ability to suffer pain, to ignore injury, to keep moving when every biological signal says stop. Varn's mandibles clattered, but the arena 10 seconds. The arena was a sprint, Vasquez said, smiling. That's the other thing. Humans are the only species on Earth that can both sprint and run marathons. We're the generalists. We're the ones who adapted to everything because we were good enough at everything. She stepped closer to the camera. Her expression softened, not with kindness, but with something like pity. You made a classic predator mistake, Overlord. You assumed that because we were prey, we were only prey. You didn't understand that humans are what happens when prey evolves to hunt the hunters. You can't hunt us, Varn whispered. We're too powerful, too advanced. Advanced, Vasquez laughed. Overlord, your species has been spacefaring for 3,000 years. In that time, you've developed exactly 2 new weapons technologies. Humans have developed 47 new ways to kill each other in the last century alone. We don't advance because we're peaceful. We advance because we're terrified of each other, of the unknown, of what might be hiding in the dark. She leaned forward, her eyes locked onto Varn's. And now, Overlords, you're the thing hiding in the dark, and we're not terrified of you anymore. The broadcast cut. Varn sat in silence for a long moment, then he activated his personal communicator. All Krill forces, he said, stand down, effective immediately. His second-in-command, a general named Thrax, appeared on screen. His chitin was scarred from combat, his eyes burned with rage. Overlord, we can still. We can still nothing, Varn snapped. They've won, not because they're stronger, not because they're smarter, because they're crazy. There are species that looks at certain death and sees a fighting chance. You cannot defeat something that refuses to die. Thrax was silent, then slowly his crest flattened in submission. Yes, Overlord. Varn closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he spoke to the recorder. To the humans, to the species from Earth, I surrender. The Krill Empire is yours. He paused, swallowed the last of his pride. Please, just tell me one thing. Why didn't you kill me? The reply came from Marcus Webb. He appeared on screen, standing in the ruins of the arena, the sand still stained with Kale's blood. Because killing you would be merciful, Marcus said. We're not here to be merciful, we're here to teach. Varn's blood ran cold. Teach what? Marcus looked directly into the camera. His smile was ancient and terrible and full of stars. We're going to teach you what it feels like to be prey, and we're going to let you live with that feeling for a very, very long time. 1 year later, the Krill Empire was no more. Not destroyed, not conquered, transformed. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of a human vessel, still a cargo hauler because the joke never got old, and watched the former Krill homeworld turn beneath him. The orbital defense grids were gone. The slave pits were memorials. The arena where he'd nearly died was now a museum, its walls covered with a single sentence in 87 languages. The predators gave humanity 1 minute. They didn't survive the first 10 seconds. You're brooding again. Marcus turned. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped onto the deck, a cup of coffee in each hand. She handed him one. He took it without thinking, his eyes still fixed on the planet below. Not brooding, he said, processing. Same thing. He snorted, fair. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as a fleet of ships departed from Krill Prime's surface. Not warships, transport vessels loaded with former slaves returning to worlds they hadn't seen in generations. The Vrixian, the Eoth, the 87 species the Krill had broken and the humans had helped rebuild. You know the Krill aren't the only ones watching us now, Vasquez said. Marcus nodded. He'd seen the reports. Other empires, older, more powerful than the Krill, had taken notice of Earth. Their emissaries were already en route, some bearing gifts, others bearing questions, a few bearing threats. The threats were the ones that concerned him. They think we're the next conquerors, Marcus said. They think we're going to become the new Krill. Do you blame them? He shook his head. No, that's what they would do. That's what any predator species would do. Take the power, enslave the weak, build an empire. He turned away from the window. His face was older than it had been a year ago, lines carved by grief, by loss, by the weight of a galaxy's expectations. But his eyes were still calm, still burning. So what are we going to do? Vasquez asked. The galaxy is waiting for an answer. Marcus smiled, not the ancient, terrible smile of a predator, something softer, something human. We're going to teach them. Teach them what? He gestured at the screen where the former slaves were celebrating their freedom, dancing, singing, crying, living. They weren't fighting, they weren't conquering, they were just free. We're going to teach them that power doesn't have to corrupt, that strength doesn't have to enslave, that the scariest thing in the universe isn't a monster, it's a monster that chooses not to be one. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. That's very philosophical for a guy who ripped a Krill's mandible off with his bare hands. Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, warm, genuine, completely inappropriate for the moment. I can be both. The ship's intercom crackled. A voice, young, excited, barely contained, announced, incoming transmission from the Xylothi Federation. They're asking for lessons. Marcus and Vasquez exchanged a glance. Lessons in what? Vasquez asked. A pause, then, in how to be what kills, what hunts them. Marcus walked to the communications console. He keyed the transmit button, looked directly into the camera, and spoke to a galaxy that was finally ready to listen. The first lesson is free, he said. The second lesson costs everything. The third lesson. He paused, smiled. The third lesson is that you don't need 1 minute to change everything. You only need 10 seconds. The transmission ended, but across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, 100,000 species, the message spread, not through ships or satellites or quantum entanglement. Through hope. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the real monsters, the old empires, the ancient predators, the things that had ruled the galaxy since before humanity learned to walk upright, listened to the message and felt something they'd never felt before. Fear. Not of the humans, they were still young, still primitive, still barely capable of interstellar travel. But they were learning, adapting, teaching. And the monsters realized with dawning horror that they weren't looking at a new species. They were looking at a new apex. The predators had given humanity 1 minute. They didn't survive the first 10 seconds. And somewhere in a cargo hauler above a broken empire, Marcus Webb closed his eyes and smiled. The hunt was over. The lesson had just begun. The end.